Commander Zevera Quell of the Galactic Council's enforcement arm did not expect the human to be eating a sandwich when she delivered the ultimatum. Ambassador Dax Mercer, short by galactic standards with close-cropped silver hair, a worn leather jacket over his formal attire, and eyes the color of deep ocean, sat at the far end of the curved negotiation table inside Kepler Station's diplomatic ring. He chewed slowly. He had not stood when the Council's delegation entered. He had not even looked up. Behind Zevera stood 6 Threnodai delegates, tall, bioluminescent beings whose skin pulsed with agitation, and 4 Veruan warriors whose carapace armor could deflect plasma fire. The translator sphere above the table glowed amber, rendering language in real time. Ambassador Mercer, Zevera said, her voice carrying the cool authority of someone who had dissolved lesser civilizations with a single memorandum. The Galactic Council has reached a unanimous decision regarding the Terran sovereignty claim on the Aurelis Belt. Dax took another bite. He still hadn't looked up. Zevara's crest darkened, a sign of irritation that all who knew her recognized as dangerous. She pressed on. The belt contains mineral deposits vital to 17 member civilizations. Earth's unilateral flag planting on the asteroid fields designated XQ7 through XQ19 constitutes an act of territorial aggression under Council Charter, Article 44, Subsection 9. You will withdraw all mining crews and automated drones within 30 standard days, or face full economic sanctions and if necessary a removal force. Silence fell over the chamber. The Threnodai delegates shimmered. The Veruan warriors shifted weight. Dax Mercer set his sandwich down. He looked up. He smiled, not the practiced smile of a diplomat, but the easy, unhurried smile of someone who had already seen the ending of this conversation and found it privately amusing. 30 days, he repeated. 30 days, Zevera confirmed. Dax reached into his jacket and produced a small data chip. He slid it gently across the polished table. It came to rest in front of Zevera with a soft click. That's our counter-proposal, he said. Zevera stared at the chip, then back at the human. You were given 30 seconds to respond before our legal team files the removal order. You are submitting a counter-proposal? I am. Ambassador. The Council is not negotiating. This is a notice of compliance. Dax leaned back in his chair and folded his hands. And that chip explains why it isn't. One of the Threnodai delegates, Senior Luminary Orvaxis, reached for the chip with a delicate four-fingered hand. He inserted it into the table's interface. A holographic display bloomed above the table. Dense star charts, engineering schematics, a cascade of numbers. Orvaxis studied it for a long moment. His bioluminescence flickered to a pale, sickly white. What is this? Zevera demanded. That, Dax said, is a complete gravitational survey of the Aurelis Belt conducted over the past 6 years. Those numbers in the lower right quadrant are projections of what happens to Sector 7 Vanthra's orbital mechanics if those specific asteroid fields are mined using the extraction methods the Council's preferred contractors employ. He paused, letting that sink in. 3 of the 17 worlds dependent on those minerals sit within the destabilization radius. Including, if my math is right, and it is, 3 Nod Prime. The chamber went very, very quiet. The amber glow of the translator sphere felt suddenly insufficient for the weight of the words it was rendering. You're bluffing, Zevera said. We've been out here for 300 years, Dax said. We bluff at poker. We don't bluff about orbital mechanics. He picked his sandwich back up. The data is independently verifiable. I'd suggest you verify it before your legal team files anything. We noticed the problem 2 years ago and we've been mining the belt carefully, in ways that don't destabilize anything, ever since. Orvaxis was already whispering urgently to the other Threnodai. Zevera stood rigid, the crest on her head cycling through colors Dax had never seen before, a chromatic argument with herself. This still doesn't give Earth sovereignty over the belt, she finally said. No, Dax agreed. But it gives us the conversation. The one where the Council acknowledges that we've been the only civilization out here competent enough not to accidentally knock 3 worlds out of their orbits. And the conversation that follows, about what Earth's responsible stewardship of the belt is actually worth. He stood, tucking his remaining lunch into his jacket pocket. We'll see you in 30 days, Commander. There's coffee in the side room. Real coffee, we brought it from home. Try it. It's one of the things that makes us worth listening to. He left. The Council delegation stood in silence around the holographic data bloom, the fate of 3 worlds rotating slowly above their heads in cold blue light. Orvaxis finally spoke, voice barely above a whisper. Run the verification. Zavera said nothing. She was looking at the doorway through which the human had walked, unhurried, unimpressed, carrying a sandwich. She had delivered 100 ultimatums in her career. She had never had one redirected so quietly back at her. She had a sudden, deeply uncomfortable feeling that she had made a significant error, not in issuing the ultimatum, but in the 6 years before it, during which her intelligence division had apparently been watching the wrong things. She reached for the coffee. Rear Admiral Priya Nandakumar had never particularly wanted to be famous. She had wanted, as a young girl in Chennai who stared at the sky until her neck ached, to understand things. The universe was large and full of things that did not yet make sense, and that had seemed to her a career's worth of material. She had ended up understanding a great many things, including, most recently, how to build a fleet that no one could see coming. The INS Ashoka was not a warship in the traditional sense. It was 9 kilometers long, a drifting industrial habitat as far as any passive sensor sweep could tell. Mining processors, material refineries, crew quarters, the unglamorous machinery of extraction. It had spent 4 years in the belt, and the Galactic Council's patrol vessels had swept past it 17 times without registering anything unusual. They were not, Priya reflected, looking in the right places. Status report, Commander Osei, she said without looking up from the tactical console. Commander Kwame Osei, her XO, a compact man from Accra with an engineering doctorate and the gift of absolute calm, checked his screen. All 32 shadow vessels holding position. Electromagnetic profile within noise threshold. The Council's enforcement cruiser, the Relentless Clarity, is running its standard sweep of Grid 7. They'll pass within 800 kilometers of the Ashoka in approximately 11 minutes. And they'll see a mining barge with a slow leak in Processing Unit 4. We've been cultivating that leak for 3 weeks. It's very convincing. Priya allowed herself a small smile. This was the thing the Council consistently failed to understand about humanity. The species had spent 10,000 years learning to survive things that were bigger, faster, and more powerful than itself. That education did not produce overconfidence. It produced patience, cleverness, and an intimate relationship with the concept of the long game. The 32 shadow vessels, Earth's first true deep space combat wing, the Phantom Fleet, classified above top secret for 7 years, were not the most advanced ships by raw tonnage or energy output. They didn't need to be. They were built around a single, devastating philosophy. You don't have to be stronger than your enemy, you have to be invisible until the moment you are decisive. Priya's communicator chimed. The face that appeared was Ambassador Dax Mercer's, slightly grainy across the encrypted channel. How are we looking? He asked. The Council still has no idea what's parked in their backyard, Priya said. How are the negotiations? Interesting. Dax pulled at his ear, a habit she'd come to recognize as meaning things were going precisely according to plan. The gravitational survey data held up under their independent verification. Orvaxis is basically lobbying for us now. His planet's continued orbital existence is a compelling motivator. And Zavera Quell? She's smart. She knows she's missing something. She just doesn't know what. He paused. She sent a survey drone into the belt interior yesterday. Standard intelligence probe. Priya checked her display. We spoofed it. It went home having seen nothing but rock and ice. Good. Dax's expression shifted, not quite to something harder but to something more measured. Priya. I need to ask you a question and I need an honest answer. Go ahead. If this breaks down, if they decide to send the removal force rather than negotiate, can we stop them? Priya was quiet for 3 seconds. She looked at her tactical console. She thought about the 32 vessels drifting silently in the dark, their crews patient and trained and ready. She thought about the 7 years of preparation. She thought about what Earth had given up, what it had sacrificed in budget and resources and secrecy, to put this capability in place. We don't want to find out, she said carefully. The goal is to make it unnecessary. That's not what I asked. Another pause. Yes, she said. We can stop them. But Dax, if we do, nothing will ever be the same. The Council will know what we are, and every subsequent interaction with every species in this galaxy will be colored by that knowledge. We become something different. Dax nodded slowly. Then let's make sure we're never pushed that far. The channel closed. On the tactical display, the Relentless Clarity slid past 800 kilometers away, its sensors dutifully recording a leaky mining barge, and moved on. In the darkness around it, 32 ships held perfectly still and said nothing. In the belt's deepest sectors, the automated mining drones continued their careful work, following extraction paths calculated to 3 decimal places of orbital mechanical precision, guided by survey data 6 years in the making. Humanity had been mining asteroids since the early 22nd century. It had been making mistakes and learning from them since long before that. The galaxy was large and old and full of civilizations that had reached the stars and promptly assumed they had learned everything important. Earth had learned something different, that the student who survives the longest is not always the smartest, but the one who never stops paying attention. Priya leaned back in her chair and looked at the stars through the observation port. They were the same stars she had stared at as a child in Chennai, close enough now to touch, though she never forgot that they were also full of things humanity did not yet understand. That, she supposed, was still a career's worth of material. The conclave chamber was a marvel of architectural cooperation. 17 different atmospheric zones arranged in concentric rings around a shared neutral air center, each section supporting the biology of a different member civilization. Zavera Quell stood in the Veruan zone, where the air was slightly thicker and the gravity marginally elevated, and watched the vote tally above the central dais. 11 in favor of deploying the removal force. 4 abstaining. 2 against. Orvaxis of Threnod was one of the 2 against. His protest had been eloquent and specific. The gravitational survey data had been independently verified by 3 council-appointed astrophysicists and confirmed in every material detail. Earth's mining operations were demonstrably safer than the proposed alternatives. To remove them without establishing a new, Earth-compatible stewardship framework was, as he put it, exchanging a working solution for an untested one on the grounds of political pride. The 11 who voted for deployment had a simpler argument: precedent. If Earth succeeded in claiming resources through unilateral action and sophisticated data presentation, every minor civilization with a geological survey team and a clever ambassador would try the same thing. The Council's authority rested on the principle that its decisions were final. 11 civilizations had built their internal politics around that principle. They were not prepared to let it bend. Zavera had abstained. She was one of the 4. She had abstained because she was still thinking about the data chip and the sandwich and the way Ambassador Mercer had walked out of the room, not with the nervous relief of a successful bluff, but with the settled confidence of someone whose preparations were already complete. The vote carried. Supreme Director Inath Voss of the Cathali Consensus, a massive, slate-gray being who communicated through subsonic vibration translated by the ambient speaker system, declared the resolution binding. The removal force would be dispatched within 48 hours. 3 enforcement cruisers and their escort wings, carrying enough firepower to enforce compliance from any civilization currently registered with the Council. There were 11 civilizations currently registered with the Council. Earth was not registered. Earth had applied for observer status 14 years ago. The application had been tabled 11 times. Zavera caught Orvaxis after the session, in the corridor outside the Threnodai atmospheric zone. His bioluminescence had the flat, suppressed quality she had come to associate with deep worry. "You know something I don't?" she said. It was not a question. Orvaxis studied her for a long moment. "The survey data," he said, "was not the most interesting thing on that chip. There was a secondary dataset embedded in the file structure. Compressed. Encrypted, but with a key deliberately left in an accessible location. I almost missed it." "What was it?" "A partial inventory," Orvaxis said, "of something in the belt interior. The inventory was incomplete, I believe deliberately so. But the partial data suggested." He paused, choosing words carefully. "It suggested that Earth has not been in the belt only to mine." Zavera went very still. "I brought this to the session floor," Orvaxis continued. "I was the second vote against. The first was Director Selene of the Mirith Confederation. She also saw the secondary dataset. The 11 who voted for deployment either did not look at the full chip or chose not to consider its implications." "What are the implications?" Orvaxis's bioluminescence pulsed once, deeply, a Threnodai expression Zavera had seen only rarely, and only in very serious contexts. "The implication is that when our 3 enforcement cruisers arrive at the belt interior, they may find that the balance of forces is not what the Council has assumed." Silence stretched between them. In the distance, down the corridor, she could hear the ambient sounds of the conclave dispersing. The largest gathering of galactic authority in this sector, moving cheerfully toward their next agenda items, wholly confident in the machinery of collective power that had governed this region of space for 2,000 years. "Can we stop the deployment?" Zavera asked. "Not through Council procedure. The vote is binding." "Then I need to warn the fleet commander." "The fleet commander," Orvaxis said quietly, has been briefed only on what is in the official intelligence files. The secondary dataset was outside those files. And the Council's intelligence division, as we are discussing, may have been watching the wrong things. Zavera took a slow breath of the slightly too thick Veruan air. She thought about the 30-day window, now 4 days from closing. She thought about an ambassador eating a sandwich. She thought about data chips with things hidden inside them, not hidden to deceive but hidden to be found by those who looked carefully enough. A warning dressed as a threat, dressed as a counter-proposal. He was talking to us, she said slowly. Not just negotiating. He was trying to tell us something. Trying to prevent. She trailed off. Yes, Orvaxis said. I believe so. She was already moving, pulling out her communicator, composing the most important message of her career. A warning to 3 enforcement cruisers that were already preparing for departure. Commanding officers who were already thinking about a straightforward compliance enforcement action against an unregistered civilization's mining operation. She had 4 days to change what was about to happen. She hoped it was enough. 3 enforcement cruisers dropped out of faster-than-light transit at 14:17 Standard Time, 5 minutes early at the edge of the Aurelis Belt. Their entry vectors were precise. Their formation was textbook. Admiral Taithvorik of the Veruan contingent, commanding the lead vessel the Sovereign Will, had run this kind of operation 43 times in his career. He expected it to take 6 hours. The first anomaly appeared at 14:19. His sensor operator, a young Cathali named Asen who had been in service for 3 years, reported it in the careful, measured tones of someone who was not yet sure whether they were seeing a malfunction or something real. Admiral. I have contacts. Multiple. Grid 7. They're not registering on the pre-mission intelligence briefing. Malfunction. Taithvorik asked. Running diagnostics now, sir. But, no. 3 different sensor arrays are confirming. I count. A pause, and Taithvorik recognized the sound of someone recounting to make sure they had the number right. 32 distinct vessels. Classes not in the registry. No identification transponders. None? None, sir. The communicator on the command chair activated at that moment. An incoming hail on a standard frequency, clear and unencrypted. Whoever was sending it wanted to be received by everyone on all 3 ships without any ambiguity about reception. The face on the channel was Rear Admiral Priya Nundakumar. She was wearing a dark ESDF uniform with no insignia beyond rank. She was sitting in a command chair that, Taithvorik noted with a professional observer's eye, looked very well worn, the chair of someone who used it a great deal. Admiral Taithvorik, she said. Welcome to the Aurelis Belt. I'm Rear Admiral Priya Nundakumar, Earth Space Defense Force. I have 32 vessels in your operational area. I want to be transparent with you about what this is and what it isn't. Taithvorik said nothing. A good commander, when genuinely surprised, does not speak immediately. He let his silence be the question. This is not an attack, Nundakumar continued. We are not targeting your vessels. We have not powered any weapon systems. I can transmit our full sensor readout to confirm that if you'd like, you'll see that every one of my ships is running on minimal power, maneuvering profile only. She paused. What this is, Admiral, is a demonstration that the situation on the ground is different from what the Council's Intelligence Division has been reporting. We are here. We have been here. We have been operating responsibly, transparently recorded in our own logs which we are prepared to share in full. What do you want? Taithvorik said. I want you to call Ambassador Mercer, Nundakumar said simply. He's currently in session with Commander Quell and Senior Luminary Orvaxis at Kepler Station. He has a proposal ready. We believe it resolves the belt question in a way that works for the Council and for Earth. She met his eyes through the view screen. I also want you to understand that if the Council had sent this fleet with orders to fire first, rather than to enforce compliance, we were prepared to defend ourselves in these mining operations. We still are. That's the honest answer to a question you haven't asked yet. But that's not what I want. What I want is a phone call. A second chime from the communicator. Zavera Quell's face appeared in a split screen. She looked like someone who had not slept in 30 hours, and also like someone who had finally solved an equation that had been bothering them for weeks. Admiral Taithvorik, Quell said. Stand down the tactical approach. I'm requesting an immediate full session of the Council's negotiating team. I believe we've been operating from incomplete information. She glanced at Nundakumar on the same split screen. Both sides have been trying to get to the same conversation. Let's have it. Taithvorik looked at his sensor display. 32 unregistered vessels, holding position, weapons cold, broadcasting passive identification. Around them, the belt's asteroids drifted in their ancient patient orbits, undisturbed, unmoved, carefully preserved by 6 years of precise extraction work. He had run 43 compliance enforcement operations. He had never had one open with a target that was already briefing him on its own capabilities, offering transparency, and asking him to make a phone call. "Helm," he said. "Hold position." He looked at his communications officer. "Get me Ambassador Mercer." On the sensor display, 32 ships held their patient positions. They did not move closer. They did not power weapons. They simply remained visible, present, undeniable, a fact that now existed in the universe and could not be taken back. Taith Vorik had 43 operations behind him. He suspected he was now in his 44th, and that it was going to be the one he described to his children. The room was arranged differently from the first meeting. The curved negotiation table had been replaced with a round one. There was no raised dais for the council delegation. The atmospheric processing had been adjusted so that every species present, 3 council representatives, 2 Earth officials, and senior luminary Orvaxis as an independent observer, could breathe without supplementary systems. It was Zevera Quell who had arranged those details. She had been awake for 31 hours and it showed, but her thinking had clarified in the way that sometimes happens after very long periods without sleep, unnecessary complexities falling away, leaving only what was essential. What was essential, she had concluded, was this: Earth was in the belt. Earth had been in the belt for 6 years. Earth had the capability to stay in the belt against any force the Council could presently bring to bear, and had chosen not to use that capability, and had instead sent an ambassador with a data chip and a sandwich. That sequence of choices revealed something about the civilization, making them that she had not previously taken seriously enough. Dax Mercer arrived exactly on time. He was wearing a different jacket, this one dark blue, slightly formal, no worn edges. He sat down across from Zevera, and neither of them said anything for a long moment. "You could have shown us the fleet from the beginning," Zevera said finally. "Yes. Why didn't you?" Dax considered this. "Because a civilization that leads with its military capability is announcing that it has nothing more interesting to offer. We wanted to be in this room because of what we know, not what we can shoot." He glanced at the data pad in front of him. "We still want that, actually. The fleet is a last resort. We'd prefer you never think about it again. That seems unlikely, given that you parked 32 ships in our enforcement zone. We parked them there to prevent a fight, not to start one. There's a difference." Zevera studied him. "You've been planning this for years. All of it, the survey data, the shadow fleet, the chip with the secondary dataset that you left findable for anyone who looked carefully enough. The way Ambassador Mercer walked out of the first meeting, unhurried because he already knew this day would come." "How long?" Dax was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful, without performance. "Earth has been trying to join this council, or something like it, since we made first contact with the Threnodai 60 years ago. Our applications were tabled 11 times. We were told we were too young, too volatile, too prone to conflict among ourselves to be trusted with council membership. Which was, I want to be honest, fair criticism for a while. And now we've spent 60 years watching how this institution works, learning its charter, understanding its mechanics. We've been building the evidence that the criticism no longer applies." He slid his data pad across the table. "That's our application for full council membership. Not observer status. Full membership. With a seat at the conclave, a vote on resource governance, and a formal role in the stewardship of the Aurelis Belt." The council delegates looked at each other. Director Selene of the Mirith Confederation, who had voted against the deployment force, who had found the secondary dataset, who had spent 24 hours quietly preparing for exactly this conversation, spoke first. "The membership criteria require evidence of stable governance, demonstrated ethical conduct in interstellar contexts, and technical competency in resource management. On paper, the belt operation addresses all three." She looked at Zevera. "The question is whether the conclave is prepared to consider it. The 11 who voted for deployment," Zevera said slowly, "were voting against allowing precedent to bend. Against the principle that council decisions are final." She looked at Mercer. "Full membership would mean Earth participates in making those decisions. That's a different argument entirely." "Yes," Dax said. "It is. Because the precedent the Council is actually worried about is not about minor civilizations claiming resources through data. It is about civilizations that operate outside Council authority. The solution to that concern is not to keep Earth outside. It is to bring us in. He paused. We have been responsible stewards of the belt for 6 years, responsible actors in this sector for 60. We have demonstrated what we are. The Council keeps tabling our application because we have never forced the question. Now we are forcing it, not with weapons, but with a completed membership application and 6 years of mining data that saved 3 worlds from an orbital mechanics catastrophe that no one else caught. Orvaxis spoke, and his voice carried the deep certainty of someone who has been thinking about something for a long time and has finally found the moment to say it plainly. 3 of those worlds were Threnod, Mirith, and Cathali. 3 of the 17 Council members. The civilization that detected the problem, documented it, and operated carefully for 6 years to preserve it from becoming a catastrophe was not a member, was not consulted, was actively dismissed. He looked at Zavera. If we table this application in 12th time, I am not certain I can explain that decision to my people. The room was quiet. Through the observation ports, the belt's asteroids drifted in their careful paths, the same paths they had followed for 4 billion years and would continue to follow for 4 billion more, guided now by the extraction patterns of a species that had learned to be precise. Zavera Quell, commander of the Galactic Council's enforcement arm, who had delivered 100 ultimatums and had had one quietly returned to her with a data chip and a sandwich, looked at the membership application on the data pad. She had not slept in 31 hours. She realized, in the middle of the most significant diplomatic moment of her career and possibly of the current era, and the fatigue was irrelevant because the clarity was total. I'll sponsor the application at the next conclave session, she said. I cannot guarantee the vote, but I'll sponsor it. Dax Mercer did not smile the easy, unhurried smile he had worn in the first meeting. He nodded, a small, genuine acknowledgement, the expression of someone for whom this moment was not a victory so much as an arrival at the beginning of something much larger. That's all we needed, he said. The rest we'll earn. Outside, the belt continued its ancient rotation. Inside 32 shadow vessels holding position, crews got word through the fleet channel. A single line, no elaboration, no celebration, no fanfare. Stand down. We're going home. And the ships began the slow, patient process of undocking and forming up for the transit back. In the centuries that followed, historians would write about the Aurelis Accord as the moment the Galactic Council's composition fundamentally changed. The moment a species that had been dismissed, tabled, and ultimatumed its way to a chair at the table where the galaxy's decisions were made. They would note that Earth had done it not by conquest, not by threat, and not by force, though the capability for force had been there, quiet and patient in the dark, had it been needed. They would note that it had been done with 6 years of survey data, a fleet that never fired, and an ambassador who had looked at the most powerful gathering of authority in the sector and sat down to eat a sandwich. And they would note, in the academic discussions of the Aurelis Accord that appeared in political science curricula across 17, then 18, worlds for generations afterward, that the most instructive lesson was not about military capability or diplomatic cunning. It was about patience, about the long game, about a species that had spent 10,000 years learning that the most dangerous thing in any room was not the biggest creature, or the most powerful one, but the one that had been paying the most careful attention. Earth had been paying attention. And when the moment came, it knew exactly what to say.